All right, let's dive into one of the most chaotic, earth-shattering events in all of history, the French Revolution. Over the next few minutes, we're going to unpack what kicked it all off, how it completely exploded, and the super complicated legacy it left for the entire world. But let's start with the huge question that's really at the heart of this whole thing. I mean, what does it actually take for an entire country to look around and say, you know what, this isn't working. Let's tear it all down and start over. That's really what this is all about. So to get what happened, you have to picture France in the late 18th century. It wasn't just a kingdom with problems. It was a kingdom that was deeply, fundamentally divided and just teetering on the edge of total collapse. Okay, so French society was basically split into three groups called estates. You had the first estate, which was the clergy, and the second estate, the nobility. Now get this, together they had all the money and all the power, but they paid pretty much zero taxes. That meant the entire financial weight of the country fell on the third estate, which was, literally, everyone else. And we're not talking about a small group here. The third estate was 97% of the population. Think about that. Merchants, lawyers, peasants, workers in the city. Just about everybody in France was paying for a tiny, super privileged elite. You can just feel the pressure cooker starting to hiss. Now, society can put up with a lot of inequality for a while, but in the late 1780s, you get this perfect storm. Two massive forces came together that would light the fuse for revolution. People were starving, and at the same time, dangerous new ideas were spreading like wildfire. So, what was it? What finally lit the fuse on this powder keg? Well, it wasn't just one thing. It was this collision of total desperation and powerful inspiration. On one side, you had the raw, daily struggle for survival. The population was booming, but bad harvests meant food was scarce, and the price of bread, the food of the people, went through the roof. The gap between the starving masses and the ridiculously wealthy just became impossible to ignore. And then, on the other side, you have this new educated middle class. They're reading these radical philosophers who are talking about individual rights and questioning why a king should have all the power. And they had a fresh example to look at. The American Revolution had just succeeded. And this one idea, this was the real bombshell, that no one should get special treatment just because of who their parents were. I mean, that thought alone was a direct attack on the entire system of monarchy and nobility that had ruled France for centuries. So you've got people starving in the streets and these revolutionary ideas spreading everywhere. The stage was totally set. And in 1789, all that tension, all that anger, it finally just exploded. And when things started moving, they moved fast. In May, the Third Estate just walked out of a royal meeting and formed their own government, the National Assembly. Then, on July 14th, crowds stormed the Bastille prison, a huge symbol of the king's power. That was it. That was the point of no return. By August, they issue the Declaration of the Rights of Man. 2 years later, the king's absolute power is gone, and by 1793, both he and the queen are executed. But look, getting rid of a king is one thing. Building a whole new society from scratch, that's something else entirely. The revolution's first big win quickly spiraled into a time of paranoia, fear, and something way more terrifying. So France has declared a republic. No more king. But this new government is shaky. It's got foreign armies at its borders and enemies inside the country. And in that climate of pure fear, things took a very, very dark turn. This is when the reign of terror begins. For about 2 years, this small group, led by a guy named Maximilien Robespierre, had all the power. Their mission? Protect the revolution at any cost. And to them, that meant executing thousands and thousands of so-called enemies of the people, often with barely any proof. The guillotine became the terrifying symbol of this era, until, in a final twist of irony, the revolution turned on itself, and Robespierre was sent to the guillotine too. After that bloodbath, France was just desperate for some stability. They tried a new government, a 5-man committee called the Directory. But honestly, it was weak, it was corrupt, and it just couldn't handle the chaos. This left a massive power vacuum, just waiting for someone strong and ambitious enough to come along and fill it. So, after all the chaos, the wars, the terror, what was left? Well, the legacy of the French Revolution is both incredibly inspiring and deeply disturbing. But one thing is for sure, it absolutely changed the world forever. You see, despite all the horror, the most powerful thing to come out of the revolution were its ideas. These concepts that we talk about all the time, liberty, equality, the rights of a citizen, they exploded out of France and spread across Europe and the rest of the world, inspiring countless movements for centuries. But here's the big catch. The Declaration of the Rights of Man famously said that all men are born free and equal. But who exactly did they mean by men? The answer is, well, it's complicated. Women were on the front lines of this thing from day one. They were marching, demanding rights, even forming their own political clubs. But when the new republic was formed, they were denied the same political rights as men. And get this, French women wouldn't win the right to vote until 1946, almost 150 years later. And you see a similar, winding road with slavery. In 1794, the revolutionary government did something amazing. They abolished slavery in all French colonies. But just 10 years later, Napoleon brought it back. It wasn't until 1848 that slavery was finally, and this time permanently, gone. The path to liberty was definitely not a straight line. So what brings it all to an end? Well, the shaky government of the Directory opens the door for a wildly popular and brilliant general to just seize power in 1799. His name was Napoleon Bonaparte. And just 5 years later, in the most stunning twist of all, the man who was seen as the savior of the revolution crowned himself Emperor of France. Which leaves us with this final massive question. Was it all a failure? I mean, a revolution that starts by chopping off a king's head to end absolute rule, only to end by crowning a new all-powerful emperor? There is no easy answer. Historians still fight about it. But the one thing that is absolutely certain is that after the French Revolution, the world would never, ever be the same again.